So I guess we should talk about the elephant in the room.
Hashtag me too.
And I guess if you're going to be really, really 12-year-old, you could say Weinstein was the elephant.
Kick him when he's down. Why not?
I guess here's my issue. We did a episode a long time ago about good art from bad people.
Yeah, this is episode 31, and that was episode 4.
Correct. It's been a while.
Yep.
And now all of this, suddenly there's so much. It's not just 1 or 6 people that we talked about.
Yep.
It's almost everybody, but then what's included now are people who didn't say anything, who knew, but they didn't say anything. Like Tarantino has come front saying, I did know. Kevin Smith, I did know.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to feel. Here's what my problem is, that there's so many of them. It's like, and then there's the people who continue to work. And we've talked off mic about this a little bit, in that, Woody Allen, who, first of all, should never have been asked what he thought about the situation.
Nope.
And then he should have said no comment. That should have happened.
Yeah, maybe sit this one out, Woody. That's not a...
that didn't happen, unfortunately. But here's my deal. Okay, so now I'm thinking about Woody Allen, and I'm going, he's still making movies.
Oh, yeah.
And I love Emma Stone. And
Scarlett Johansson. Kate Winslet.
I love
Diane
all
Weiss.
of them.
Diane Keaton. Yeah. He's worked with the best.
Correct. And so I don't know how I don't know how to feel.
Yeah, I think the thing that gets me about this all these revelations coming out, the stories that I want to highlight the most are the ones that don't have anything to do with Harvey Weinstein. Okay, Harvey Weinstein is out. He got fired. He's done. For the rest of his life, his legacy is he's a sexual predator. End of story. Recently, Jennifer Lawrence and Reese Witherspoon both came out with stories saying, I was horribly harassed at the age of 16 as well, and it wasn't Harvey.
But Lupita Nyong'o, did you read hers?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
And that was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and that was about Harvey.
Yes.
But this is bigger than Harvey.
It is. That's my point.
This is every time there's a sex scene that's being filmed on a set and a woman has to show her body, suddenly everybody on crew shows up that day. And it's like, you know what? You close that stupid set.
Yeah.
You close the set. If you're not filming or lighting that scene, you're gone. That should just be standard operating procedure.
I thought that was.
No. I mean, apparently these stories are coming out saying all of a sudden you look up and there's like 50 people just going, oh, just decided to be here today. I mean, it's just it sounds like the culture is so endemic and completely disrespectful to women across the board. I'm hopeful that all of these stories means that some big changes are coming, that we're not going to let this one go now. But if it all just gets wrapped up in Harvey Weinstein and his personal downfall, I don't think anything's going to change.
No, and it doesn't need to. But there's these men have come forward, and it's not Harvey Weinstein they're talking about. But
yeah.
It's and again, as you said, it's across the board.
Yeah.
But then there's the trickle down, is it's not just the ones who are actually committing, it's the ones who knew and kept their mouth shut.
Yep.
And I just don't know. I just don't. It's just very frustrating because I don't know who the good guy. It's not easy. It's not black and white. I don't know who the good guys are.
Yeah, and you want to think that you're giving your money to the good guys. It strikes me as well that the really, really famous ones, the ones that we think are the most powerful because they're so famous, might not be. It's the people like Harvey Weinstein, who we've heard of, but is not really a celebrity the way that George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino are. They hold all the power.
It's the ones that are those names that are come off after a producer.
Yep.
Those are the names that are,
and those are the ones that get away with all this bullshit. Right. So
anyway, it's still a conflict, I think, for the viewer to figure out who's it okay to give money to?
Yeah.
Who can I sleep well at night after I have paid for this ticket?
Exactly. And is it anybody? I mean, is Hollywood just so sick?
I think it's a personal choice that you have to decide, okay, this person, no, I'm not going to go see that. I'm not going to give them the money. Or this person, you know what? I'm going to do it.
Or just spend your life watching Acorn TV and just say, fuck the rest.
Well, that's kind of me.
When the chaos of popular culture makes your brain hurt, you really need relief in the form of a transfusion of analysis and humor. It's time for a Poperation. Join hosts Eric and Stacey as they dissect popular culture one bloody organ at a time. It's just what the doctor ordered.
You are listening to Popperation. I'm Stacey.
I am Eric.
And I have a brother and a sister.
I have one sister.
And siblings are a funny thing.
You're not smiling when you say that, so...
Because it's complicated. And I think everybody who is not an only child will attest to that.
Yeah.
That your relationship with your siblings can be as complicated as your relationship with your parents.
Oh, yeah. More so,
sometimes more so because sometimes it lasts longer because
your parents go away. Also, I think hearing
they die.
Well, they die, or sometimes they go away.
That's true too. Just a little rabbit hole. Did I ever tell you about when my children were little, and we would watch you watch a lot of cartoons, and the mother dies. Like Bambi's mom
dies
in Ice Age.
The mom dies. Pinocchio never had a mom.
So we were watching Ice Age, and I guess my girls were 2 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom puts the baby up so the mammoth can take care of the baby because the mom knows she's in the water and she knows she's going to go.
Yeah.
So she puts the baby up. We get a close-up of the mammoth looking at the baby. Then we go back to where the mom was, and she's gone.
Yep.
It's just a rolling river. My daughter said, "Mommy, where did the mommy go?" They're 2 and 4. I didn't want to get into the whole death thing. I told her that she went to the store. So for a couple of years after that, anytime a parent died in a movie, it was understood that they went to the store.
Yeah.
My daughter...
Although Hunter sent Bambi's mother to the store with bullets, but nonetheless, to the store she goes.
Well, I never showed my children Bambi. That's a whole other story. But it was about a couple of weeks ago. My now 14-year-old, who is the younger one, I'm leaving and I'm actually going to the store.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Bye, Mommy. Don't die."
And you knew what she was referencing.
And I knew what she was referencing.
Yeah,
I said, we're past that. But I don't know whether it was good parenting, but the whole going to the store thing. But now when you watch it and if you in your head go, well, she went to the store, it's way funnier. But all of this to say,
point taken.
When parents go to the store and you're left with your siblings,
yes,
it can be weird.
Well, and parents, my mom recently said to me, in a tender moment, basically said, there's nothing, and I don't have kids, so I was like, "Are you rubbing my face in it, Mom? What are you doing?" But she was saying, there is nothing like the unconditional love that a parent has for a child. It's just like, if you've never had kids before, it's just something that she said, I didn't even expect, but it's just there. I don't think that's necessarily true for siblings. You don't,
well, I will say this. I get that that's how your mother felt. That's not how all parents feel either.
Fair.
I'll just throw that out there.
Fair. That's valid. But
no.
But siblings they're your family. They're of your generation. They, they're part of your, sometimes siblings grow up apart, but if you grow up in the same house with the same parent or parents, you share a lot with them, but you don't choose them. Life kind of chooses them for you. And there can often be a lot of conflict there, which makes it, ripe for storytelling.
Well, I was 7 years old by the time my brother came along.
Okay.
That is a lot of time. I was an only child for 7 years.
Okay.
I always wanted a brother and sister, wanted somebody to play with.
Yeah.
My brother came along. He's a freaking baby.
Yeah.
I'm 7. So you've given me a brother, but he's useless. You know what I'm saying?
Hi, Scott. How you doing?
I love you, Boogie. My point was, it wasn't, he had to grow up a little bit before there was anything that we could do. Now, having said that, so my sister then was born 2 years later. I do remember when I was probably in early high school, and so my brother was in elementary school.
Yep.
And my sister, she was like kindergarten or first grade or something, and I remember she had a, quote, boyfriend.
All right.
Not really. She said, whatever. But he called, okay, and this is back in the day. Everybody had landlines, but you could unscrew the bottom of the phone receiver.
Yeah.
And take out the big thing in there, and that way nobody could hear you. The other people on the line couldn't hear you.
Okay.
So we were in my parents' bedroom on that extension.
Uh-huh.
My sister was in the kitchen on that extension.
Yeah.
So once we found out that this little boy had called her, my brother and I went into my parents' room. We took the bottom of the receiver off so that she couldn't hear us.
Yeah.
And we listened and made fun of. They were singing Prince to each other.
Oh.
Hello, Lucy. But anyway, I remember us laughing so hard about what they were talking about. That is a commonality. I mean, I have a feeling Scott can still remember that stuff. But it's things like that you're talking about, those common experiences that would only happen in a family.
Yep.
And obviously would only happen in the 70s with the phone situation as it is. But, we weren't close because there was that big gap of age. But there are these moments, and, family vacations that we went on that we have, as you're right, that are these common memories that nobody else in the world can have.
Yeah. With people you didn't necessarily choose to travel this road with you.
Correct.
So I connect with stories about siblings a lot. And I was saying to you recently that as a man with a sister, and that was it. It was just the two of us grown up. I'm upset at the lack of them, but I'm always thrilled when a really good story comes along about an adult brother and sister. So at some point I wanted to do a show about that. But as we talked about, siblings, is that, what there is a lot of are stories about brothers and stories about sisters. That same gender adult sibling relationship seems to be done a lot. So we thought what we'd do is we tackle both of those in two separate shows, and then we'll get to, the more rare story of the adult brother and sister kind of navigating life, and won't say too much about that now because we'll get there. But today we're talking about sisters. And like we've said, I mean, these stories are everywhere. I mean, just everywhere.
And there's also there's sisters that are real sisters, and there's step sisters. I mean, Cinderella, of course, put that on the map.
Yeah.
And so there's all different kinds, and there's the sisters that you choose as an adult.
Sure.
And so it's also then when you're in that, are these sisters that are close? They love each other. They do everything together, like twins. Sometimes do this, or is this a rivalry?
Yeah,
I want to get more of Daddy's attention or Mommy's attention, and that. What is that about? So there's so many ways that you can go. With this, and they have the books and movies and television that we're going to talk about. It runs the gamut.
Yeah. Lots of different stories, lots of different things to explore. But it's oftentimes those things where if you wanted to tell a story about two adults in a non-romantic relationship with one another, you need to know, like, why are these people friends? Like, why do they hang out with each other? And you sidestep that a little bit when you tell a story about siblings because these are your siblings. Yeah. This is who they are. And so a lot of times you get these stories of these really mismatched personalities who, if they had a choice or if they weren't related, would probably just never interact with each other at all.
So part of the interest of the story would be, if they do get along, why do they get along? Because as you just said, if they weren't in the same family, they would never run in the same circle.
Exactly.
And yet it's complicated, but the complication is what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And has from the beginning of time, when there was no television, there were no movies, there was just writing. And so
stories.
But that's always been a part of it because it is international. It is.
Yeah, this transcends culture. This is something that is just endemic to the human experience. Now, it's interesting, we talk about, you were an only child until you were 7, and you really wanted a sibling,
But I didn't know what that meant. I clearly didn't know that.
Careful what you ask for, Stacey. I was the baby, so I didn't ever know life without an older sibling. She was there from the beginning, and she doesn't remember much before I came along. She's only 3 years older than I am. Yeah,
my daughters are, 2 years apart. And I think that that's a nice age for there not to be that whole, I remember when. I do remember.
Yeah.
7 years old, I totally remember.
My mom's story was like that. She was the second of 5, but her oldest sister was 5 years old when my mom came along. And so kind of remembered a little bit. She has some memories about when she was the only. And then 4 more girls in the next 5 years. So my mom, her younger sister Kathleen, and then a set of twins.
Wow.
And so, boom, now they're a family of 5, all girls. So my mother grew up in a Bronte novel, or a Jane Austen rather novel. They were like, and my mom was Elizabeth Bennet. Look at that. She was the second one out of 5. That there's a lot of, I've kind of observed what sisters kind of do and how they behave through looking at my mom's interactions, with her sisters. And now it's my mom and the twins who are left.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's just, and they're closer now than they used to be.
I think that happens. I do think that happens. My mother has one sister, and they weren't really close after they got out of school and got married, lived in different parts of the country. Still live in different parts of the country, but they talk a lot more than they ever did.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're it.
Yeah.
The generation before them is all gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were it of their generation in our immediate family. So there is that we are the ones who have the shared memories.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is something to that connection, even if you weren't close growing up. But I was talking about books and things like that, and there are so many out there. And what's interesting is a lot of them are written by women.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, that's probably what they were allowed to write. I'm thinking of, for example, Little House on the Prairie.
Okay.
That had lots of girls in it. But there are also...
That was also her life. Those were fairly autobiographical.
That's true. That's a little bit more of
stories. And she had 2 sisters. She had an older sister and a younger sister.
Little Women.
Yep. Yep.
Little Women. I was thinking everything by Jane Austen. There were
sisters everywhere. Did Jane Austen have a lot of sisters?
I don't know that she did.
I have no idea.
I feel like I've read a biography and now I'm sitting here looking at you going, nope, don't know anything. I retained nothing.
I mentioned the Brontes. They didn't really actually write about a lot of sisters, but...
No, they didn't. But they were sisters.
They were sisters. The 3 of them were all very kind of well-regarded authors of their time. Stuff has been written about them. Correct.
And it's interesting because stuff and plays have been written about their relationship.
Yes.
And which is kind of funny that their relationship is actually kind of more famous than some of... not many people... Wuthering Heights.
Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre. Those are really the 2 books that anybody still reads, yeah.
But I was looking at some of the newer things. Practical Magic, Beloved, Color Purple.
Yeah.
Now, some of these that we'll talk about because they also got transformed on television or in movies as well. Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
But, go back to the Color Purple for a second.
Okay, yep.
As a book... The relationship between Celie and Nettie is much more explored than it is in the movie. In the movie, as a matter of narrative, of course, Nettie goes away at the very beginning and doesn't come back until the very end, and we spend all of our time with Celie.
Right. No,
the entire book is framed as letters from Nettie to Celie and from Celie to Nettie while they're separated.
Yeah, which is why I think it's more... it should be more included in the book section.
Yes,
because of that.
Yeah, the book version, if you've never read The Color Purple, it's an easy read. It's not, it's a Pulitzer Prize winner, I believe, and it really is what made Alice Walker's name. You don't, it's so great.
And another one that I'll throw in there that was also a famous movie, but the book, as books are wont to do, gives you more, is Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned
that up and you're like, what?
I was like, Melanie was her sister-in-law, and you were like, she had sisters, and I was like, really? And when I looked up Sue Ellen, I remember Sue Ellen was annoying. I hardly remember Corinne at all.
And in the movie, they're barely there. You see a little bit of the relationship she had with Sue Ellen at the beginning in the party scene, and they snap at each other and get to a little girl fight.
Yep.
But in the book, Sue Ellen is... Now, I say Sue Ellen is a awful person. That's not fair because Scarlett wasn't a nice person.
No, Scarlett's a piece of work.
They were crappy sisters to each other, okay? But what happens, Scarlett marries Sue Ellen's fiance. Scarlett's second husband is Sue Ellen's boyfriend. Sue Ellen is waiting for him to offer to marry her. Frank is going to offer to marry Sue Ellen. Scarlett gets there first because he has a company that has money and she doesn't want to be poor. So Scarlett flirts enough with him that he feels trapped, and he marries Scarlett.
As one does.
Breaks Sue Ellen's heart. It is never discussed in the book, in the entirety of the rest of the Gone with the Wind book, which is just 1,086 pages. It is never discussed whether Sue Ellen gets married. One feels that she doesn't. And she blames it all on Scarlett for the rest of her life.
As do we.
As do we. It's true. But, I mean, but again, that was a contentious relationship.
Yeah.
Corinne in the book is not in there as much, but she is this sweet soul who has Melanie tendencies, but she's just a sister and she's young.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, it's one of those where what the relationship with Scarlett and Sue Ellen does is tell you more about Scarlett. Mm-hmm. And so that's why that relationship matters. And I think that is, in The Color Purple, that, as you said, it's the letters back and forth, and it helps you understand both characters. But that's all they had at the time, not in Color Purple, but I mean, a lot of times books can give you more about relationships than.
Well, the plot line of The Color Purple from the book to film didn't change all that much. It's just the fact that all those years that they were separated, they were so on each other's mind that they were writing letters to each other for years and years and years and years. And it's just the love between these two women is so felt. At the end of the movie, when, spoiler, Nettie comes back and Celie sees her across the way and, runs to hug her. I mean, if the tears don't flow, you're not human.
Totally.
You're not a human being. I mean, it's just, it will make a stone
weep. I was a freaking puddle.
Oh, my God. So the movie has power. I mean, give Spielberg his due, but it's ever present in the book. It's like those are the two characters in the book where, in the movie, Shug and Sophia and Squeak and all these people, and we discussed them all in our Strong Black Women episode, they come to the fore a little bit more. The book is really just it's so much about these two sisters.
And I guess that part of the thing is that these books that are books and they were movies or TV, part of the reason they got made into a screen adaptation is because the book was so powerful.
Yes.
And The Hunger Games is in there as well. I mean, there's that. Now that's a different kind of relationship between those sisters. Yeah. Than Scarlett and what's her face.
Yeah, very protective. I mean, the whole point is that
sacrifice they made in order to there was a protector kind of motivation there. Yes. Where Scarlett didn't have.
So very much of a protective kind of sister in the Hunger Games that when Katniss voluntarily took the role, if you will, in this dystopian, horrible competitive thing. It's because her sisters.
Bad hair. Anyway, go on.
It's because her sister's name was drawn. And rather than, and her sister was never going to survive this thing. In fact, no one ever expects to survive this thing. They send 24 kids off to basically kill each other in the woods.
Which is the whole point. It was in theory, a suicide mission. But she was sacrificing. It was worth it to her because she loved her sister so much. Yeah. That was the relationship that they had.
And it was kind of a whole piece about how this awful totalitarian government was sacrificing little kids. Basically it was this whole thing about, Prue was just old enough to be in contention. Right. And, she's so young and just would have been popped off immediately on day one. And it was, even though, Katniss probably thought, well, I'm going to die. Like I am going to die, but I will volunteer to take her place because I can't handle that this young girl who hasn't even had a chance to experience anything of life yet, is just going to die on day one.
So there's the stories of sisters that you choose that aren't necessarily your sisters, and it's a little younger than I was, but Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants is one of those.
Those girls weren't sisters; they called themselves a sisterhood. Yeah,
and they had pants that.
Beyond that, we don't really know.
But again, it was a group of women who chose, to form this sisterhood.
I tell you what,
and have each other's back. I have one college friend, Michelle. Shout out to you. She and I met in college, roommates, and our lives have separated and come together, separate, whatever. We don't see each other maybe once every year, maybe on a good year. Usually it's once every 2 years. Okay. We talk on the phone about that same amount of time. But when we get together, it is just normal. Yep. It's like, and so I would say Yes, she is. And it's the longevity, though.
Yes.
You're talking about. It's not, because there are other friends who've come and go.
Yeah.
Okay, come and gone. She is not, again, I don't see her every day. We don't do stuff, go to the movies, go shop, whatever. We don't do that.
Yep.
But if you're going to say, would you consider somebody a sister, she would be it.
Yeah. The book / movie, and I don't know the book, I only know the movie, about chosen sisters that does resonate with me in that way is probably, I'm sorry, I'm going to do it. Beaches.
Oh, sweet mother of God!
But
I did not see that coming.
but that's what that story is, right? Is these two girls who meet, and they make a point of they meet very, very young, little Mayim Bialik on the boardwalk, doing her best Bette Midler.
No,
you know,
and Barbara Hershey right after she got her lips done.
But the whole point is they have huge drag-out blowout fights that would kill most friendships, and yet they don't abandon each other in the end because, in fact, in the end, spoiler, Barbara Hershey and her big lips die, and
because
her
she was
daughter
the wind beneath Bette Midler's wings.
Get it? And and when she does die, of course, Barbara Hershey had a daughter who then goes to live with Bette Midler, and Bette Midler is going to raise her as her own.
My favorite thing, but yes, you're right, and it was a book first.
Yeah.
So it totally belongs in this category. It's just, and again, I didn't read the book. I did see the movie.
Did you see the remake?
I watched the beginning. And then I said no to myself.
No, Adina. No.
I'm not doing this. It looked awful.
I didn't see it. I didn't see it.
awful.
I heard a lot of shade.
And
So I'm happy to revel in other people's shade, but I didn't see it.
It's a story that, to me, I don't care for it, and the reason has nothing to do with the sister choosing sisters. I get that. My reasoning is it just is such a soap opera.
Well, sure. Yeah, but
it's also, we've talked about this, it's manipulative filmmaking in that we're going to make a movie that makes women cry.
Yes.
And thus we'll have a hit. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened.
It's exactly what happened. A lot of women signed right up for that experience. And it must, but it must have resonated at some point. This idea that some female friendships they become sisterly.
Yes.
There's no way these two women could have not existed without the other, and the fights could not break these two women apart.
And I think if you're lucky as an adult, you do have some of those. Yeah. Not just one. Hopefully you have several friendships that can take you through the ups and downs of life.
I'm just making a distinction that's not a friendship. That that when you say chosen family, there's something that's more powerful about that. This idea that we can fight and we're still bonded.
Correct.
And that's something that sibling relationships have over most of your friendships.
Now, there was one other book that was huge, and they've made innumerable television thingies and movie thingies.
Katharine Hepburn, Winona Ryder.
Was Elizabeth Taylor in one of them?
Yes, she was.
Little Women.
June Allison.
Little Women, and I think talking about you said about beaches, it resonates with women who have sisters, or just even if you just have one sister, you get the relationships they have. Yeah, and it goes to some of that. They have fights and all of that, but it doesn't matter in the end. They're sisters. Yeah, and their mother helps. She is an enabler of them.
Marmee.
Being that close. Didn't Susan Sarandon?
Susan Sarandon was in the Winona Ryder version.
I pulled that.
Susan Sarandon was Marmee. Yeah. It's interesting. Little Women, is part of this whole, series of that, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Downton Abbey. There seems to be a lot of stories about, families that are all girls. And in certain periods of history,
that was a problem.
That was a problem for some families. Like they kept having kids thinking we have to have a boy because we have to have someone that we can legally pass down this property to, who hopefully can then take care of his sisters as well as his family. When you have a family that's all girls, that becomes, and so with Pride and Prejudice especially, it's like, who do we marry? How do we get... I saw a great article the other day saying that Mrs. Bennet is treated the mother in that is treated so unfairly. Did you see this?
I saw the article. I didn't read it yet, though.
Because the whole point is, she is concerned with who her daughters may, because she's got her eye on the long term. And while it's very easy to make fun of her, in fact, she's got a more realistic outlook than either Jane or Elizabeth do. Yeah. And we should maybe not be so mean to her.
Here's what I'm going to say about the character.
Uh-huh.
Well, first of all, that theory, I agree 100% in that, yes, she is actually pragmatic in what she's looking at. She did not necessarily marry for love, as some of the things that are said by both Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet attest that they're married, and that's fine. But it wasn't as a case at that time.
Yeah,
is that it was for practical reasons that she got married. So she doesn't necessarily want her girls to be waiting for love. They need to look out for the family, because also she knew if they didn't, by not having any boys, once Mr. Bennet died, the house and the money goes to that awful, awful cousin.
Yeah.
And so that was why her first thing was to marry a girl off to the cousin. That way she doesn't lose the house. But then after that, it's about, okay, we need somebody who can have some money, because we're not going to give anything to you. You're going to get nothing from us.
Yeah.
So there is a practicality. Here's what I'm going to go. On the other side, though, she was an idiot. She would say things. She pushed, the idea that once Kitty got married to that awful what's-his-face.
Yeah.
She hated him until suddenly they were married, and then suddenly he's her favorite ever. Ms. Bennet turned on a dime, and I think she, in a certain respect, she was very, very shallow. And I think that's part of the problem that Mr. Bennet had with her.
Yeah.
That's why he liked Lizzie, because Lizzie understood him and read, whereas Mrs. Bennet. So there is an idiocy to her. So I think that she should be made fun of for that.
Yeah.
But as far as the practicality of trying to get her daughters married off, that was just her thinking ahead.
Yeah.
That was what you needed to do.
Yeah.
But she was still an idiot. You see some of the stuff she said.
Well, it's true. And
she's
actresses,
not nice to her daughters at all.
And actresses who play her have a great time. But getting back to the point of sisters, that relationship between Jane and Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice is
despite the mother. The mother is an idiot. They both realize it, and that if they're going to have any kind of control over their life, they have to take it themselves.
And quite frankly, they're more concerned with having happy lives than they are with having comfortable lives. Yeah. So they'll take their happiness over their comfort. And of course, along comes Mr. Darcy, who offers both. And that's very convenient. But the relationship between the two of them could have very well devolved into a whole lot of competition.
It could, because Jane was considered the pretty one. And Lizzie was the smart one.
Yep.
Now, what's funny about this is that anytime you see a movie, Elizabeth is often
prettier
at least
than Jane.
pretty, but sometimes she's prettier.
Yeah.
It's like, really? That's what we're doing?
Well, because that's the part to have. Any actress who ever would rather play Lizzie than Jane.
Yeah, she's
much more interesting, and she's just so much more to play, and she's at the center of the story in a lot of ways.
Did you know that Greer Garson, I think she was like 30 or something. She was old as F when she played that 18-year-old. And when you watch the movie, which is fun to watch, don't get me wrong, Laurence Olivier, it's very stylized acting. First of all, understand it's stylized acting. That's not the kind of acting that you see in movies anymore. So just put that in a bucket and don't think about that, and don't make that color how you see the movie. The movie is very entertaining. They've changed some things in it. But Laurence Olivier is lovely to watch. He's such a good actor.
Yes.
But Greer Garson, I sit there now and I'm going, you are somebody's mother. I mean, this is the most bizarre thing. Anyway, I just went off.
My very no Lizzie Bennet will ever hold a candle as far as I'm concerned. And I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Jennifer L.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce her name? Ehle. She is just phenomenal. She benefits from being in a mini-series rather than a movie. So you do get the time to really kind of let the story breathe a little bit.
And I think that is the quintessential. I think everybody will say that the 1984
mini-series
is just mini-series.
Colin Firth
and Jennifer L. And they had just a great cast. All these old school British actors.
Yep.
Some of them playing bit parts, but they're brilliant at it. It is worth, 6 hours?
6 or 8. It's an investment in time,
Because
but
it's the
so
whole book.
well worth it.
It's the whole
It's
book.
the whole book done on film. And if you binge a Netflix series, it's less time than that. So just sit down and just, spend 3 or 4 nights.
And I think it's on Netflix or Amazon.
Yeah.
It's on one of those. And it's just, but it is actually the whole book.
Yeah.
As opposed to Keira Knightley, which is lovely. Okay.
It's great.
But they have to cut stuff.
They have to. And in the miniseries, you get all 5 of the sisters. There are 5 girls in this story. And some of the younger ones make some foolish choices. And
so this
how the family decides to either rally around them and how they express that disappointment. Again, it goes back to the central thesis of this whole show, which is when it's your sister and not just your friend, you can't write them off. They're family. They become part of the package.
And clearly the older sisters in this family are much more down to earth, and they are a little bit more intelligent than the younger sisters. But you see them wanting to be there. When stuff goes down, Lizzie's on vacation, she drops it and she goes home. And that's just, it's the circling of the wagons that family does.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yep.
So, but I mean, again, you can find a lot of sister relationships in books, and sometimes it's going to be a much deeper look at sister relationships than you're going to get in television or movies, just because they have the ability. One more book, which is, again, it's way, 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 way younger than you and I are. Beezus and Ramona.
Oh, I remember Beezus and Ramona.
Oh, did you? Oh, that was okay.
Beverly Cleary was writing when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Not me. So I was.
Who was the guy? Henry.
I was reading Judy Blume. She didn't write about sisters.
Henry and he had a little brother too, Fudge. Right? Fudge was the little brother, and then Beezus and Ramona. And Beezus was actually Beatrice. Yeah. But her little sister Ramona couldn't say Beatrice, so calls her Beezus when she's a little kid. And Ramona and Fudge are both very, precocious young children, and they're very funny.
Beezus was played by Selena Gomez in the movie.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, so the movies are I was far into adulthood by the time Selena Gomez was a human. Let's just, put it there. But in book form, I remember Beezus and Ramona. Yeah. They were charming. They were, yeah.
And so that's, you can start from very early. Sure. About siblings, good relationships.
Yeah.
And go from there. And I think that's great.
And as kids, it's interesting because what is probably a 3 or 4 year span between Beatrice, Beezus, and Ramona.
At least.
As children, 4 years is a gulf as wide as the Grand Canyon.
Huge.
You grow up and those years become less and less and less. When you're in your 40s, they mean absolutely nothing. But the older sister is always the older sister.
Oh, hell
and the younger sister is always the younger sister. So because it's imprinted when you're kids. So yeah, reading about little sisters who are really young children, it's a different kind of dynamic.
Yep.
And these were books that were obviously written for kids of that age too. Because again, it's and I say this all the time. This is a drumbeat that I keep sounding on this show, is the importance of representation. It's the importance of seeing yourself reflected back in some of these stories that you experience. So it's so important for little kids to get stories about little kids.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, they can read Cinderella. Little girls read Cinderella, who's, probably 17 or 18, 16 maybe. Snow White was 14, I think. But nonetheless, these romantic and, waiting for the prince to come carry them away, whatever. We can get into how problematic that is. But it's really important for little kids to experience stories about little kids, which is why, Harry Potter doesn't really belong in this whole sisters piece.
No, but my point is about books.
But that was why they were so powerful too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that is books and sisters, and we're going to talk a little bit more about movies and television representations of sisters
when we come back.
You're listening to Pop-Oration with Eric and Stacey. Take a deep breath. This may sting a little.
So, sisters.
Sing it. There were never such devoted sisters. Okay. Fail.
She wore the dress and I stayed home. See, I know it. I actually made my daughters learn it.
Oh, no.
they hate me for it.
Okay.
And they refuse to do it now because they're 14 and
Mm-hmm.
16. But when they were little, they would do it.
Yeah.
I loved it so much. I think it's probably child abuse, but
Sometimes it's worth it.
it was worth it in my head watching them sing that fabulous song.
Obviously, for those who don't know what we're doing here, since we've come back, we're referencing White Christmas, the Bing Crosby, Rosemary Clooney musical that features Rosemary Clooney and
Vera Ellen.
Vera Ellen. I knew it was two first names. Vera Ellen as two sisters whose nightclub act consists of this number all about how devoted they are until they start fighting over a man, and then it's all over because, of course, that's the 1940s view of who women were. Isn't that charming?
It was a documentary.
So sisters at the movies.
There's tons of them.
Oh,
you can
endless.
What kind you want? You want the fighting ones? You want the loving ones? You want the ones who get into hijinks? Now, first of all, I will say that a number of them come from the books that we were talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
So we talked about Little Women already. There are like several versions of that. Hunger Games. Duh.
Yep.
Practical Magic.
There.
Duh. Color Purple.
Yep.
We talked about that and how, and again, that some of these showcase how you probably, if you like the movie, you should probably read the book. Mm-hmm. just because it probably has more depth to it.
Yep. Now, one that was also famously a book that we didn't get into before, but is a film that I absolutely love, that I'd love to get into with you here, because I think this sibling relationship, especially as played by Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet, was just so amazing. Sense and Sensibility. Another Jane Austen novel.
And I believe this, for me, we talked about Pride and Prejudice and that sister relationship, but this one, to me, is a more intense story about a sister relationship.
Well, there's only two of them, so that there's three. There were three. There was a much younger sister. Right. There was a much younger sister.
She's Kareen.
Whatever. Yeah. She's there. She's cute. She's little. But the two older ones, and this was yet another story about a family of all girls, and what are we going to do?
That's right.
And one of them has the sense, that's Emma Thompson. One of them is full of nothing but sensibility, and that's Kate Winslet, who is romantic and kind of far-flung, and naive in a very charming kind of way.
This really showed us what Kate Winslet could do.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah. She'd been in Heavenly Creatures before. We knew who she was, but she really let it loose on this one. And Emma Thompson, you kind of joked about Greer Garson before. Probably, should have been a little closer to Kate Winslet's age to be a faithful adaptation of the film.
Probably true.
But so good. Who fuck cares? Who cares?
I would rather see her in that than somebody else who's closer in age, but not Emma Thompson.
Exactly. Also,
fun fact.
Yes, but these two sisters at the heart of this film, really, and captured by this title, just have completely different worldviews. Again, a great example of two women who, were they not related, and had they not had this kind of goal in it, they'd never interact. They wouldn't intersect.
Neither of them would have had patience for the other one.
No.
Because they were they thought about things very, very differently until the very end.
Yes. And the scene that just breaks your heart, but is so brilliantly acted, is when Kate Winslet looks at Emma Thompson's character Eleanor and just can't believe how stoic she's being as these things are happening that would break anybody's heart. She says, "Have you no heart?" Mm-hmm. And Emma Thompson just breaks down. And is furious with her sister for even suggesting this. But it's like, you can talk to me because everything you do is just on your sleeve. I don't have the freedom to do that. I've been holding this in for years, and just finally just kind of lets loose. And it's such a painful scene.
Well, what I think,
but so brilliantly done. Oh, Emma. Ugh.
But I also think what that scene is also talking about, how in a sister relationship, in a sibling relationship, but certainly in a sister relationship, because you're comparing yourself to this other female. Mm-hmm. So all this time when you're sisters and you're seeing your sister through your own eyes, mm-hmm. as a child, that's normal. That's your very self-involved kind of thing.
Yeah.
What that scene is when you finally see Kate Winslet's character looking at her sister as an adult for the first time.
Yeah.
And that that happens to every sister because suddenly, because as a child is also because your parent is this authoritarian figure forever and ever. And then at some point, either you see them crying at something or something happens. You're like, holy crap, they're humans.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with your sister as well. And so I feel like that's that scene there where they finally.
Yeah. And very particular to the older sister, younger sister dynamic as well. Which is why I don't fault this movie for casting Emma Thompson probably a little bit older than that character would have been. It's important for us to get always that Eleanor's the older sister and has had to carry the weight that Kate Winslet has not had to shoulder.
And I will say, I'm an older sister, and I will tell you, and every older sister out there will tell you, it is a thing. Just as being the youngest is a thing, and being the middle is a thing. Birth order matters.
Yeah.
And it determines a lot of things about your personality and about the opportunities and about how, your parents deal with you, all of that. And in sisters, it's, when it's I think it's, as we'll talk about at some point, is that it's, when it's a sister-brother thing, there's that. But, and in your family, it's just two of you. Yeah. So it's one son, one daughter. Yeah. So that comparison isn't there.
I'm the baby, but I'm the boy as well. So that makes it a little more complicated.
But there's a less competition in, you don't have to compete against anyone else for being the boy. No. And your sister doesn't compete for anyone, Whereas if you're the middle sister of three, dear God, I'll be honest, I'm an oldest, so I get it. Yeah. I'm glad I wasn't a middle daughter. That would suck.
Now, Kate Winslet was the middle daughter, though, in this story. Again, their younger sister is so much younger.
She's kind of still the baby. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. The younger sister is so much younger that I feel like Kate Winslet's character is still feeling like the baby. Yeah. They do a great job on that story. Yeah. It's a good story, but that is a wonderful movie.
And Emma Thompson won an Oscar. For adapting that.
Which we were talking about. Yeah. It's hard to adapt books to movies.
But she did a brilliant job. Ang Lee directed it. It's fantastic. To me, it's just like it's the penultimate two-sister story because it's ostensibly about their love lives, and they both kind of end up married at the end, and what's going to happen, and all of these Jane Austen books seem to be kind of what's going to happen to these poor girls who don't have a brother to they have to get married. But this one, probably not her best novel, but I think for my money the best Jane Austen adaptation put to film.
You may be right.
That miniseries we talked about before, Colin Firth and Jennifer L. But in terms of film form, and it has everything to do with the way Emma Thompson put that script together and the way that it really focuses that story on these sisters and their growth together through all of this. Just brilliant. Yeah.
And it is, being the oldest, she was very protective. The relationship here was, Kate's was shallow, whatever, but Emma's was still a very protective thing, like in The Hunger Game. And one that I know that is close to your heart, because we were also talking about, when bad people do good art kind of thing, is Hannah and Her Sisters.
Yes, Woody Allen's film. Now, Woody Allen, problematic as fuck. I get it. Yeah. This was made, if it's not Husbands and Wives, if Mia Farrow was in a Woody Allen movie, that this is pre-problematic Woody Allen. I don't know that he was ever not problematic in a lot of ways, but this is before the big scandals erupted. So when I saw Hannah and Her Sisters for the first time, I had no guilt about it. I loved Woody Allen's movies. He's a brilliant writer. He's an amazing director. These performances, these sisters, speaking of Barbara Hershey, in the performance I liked her much more in as the sister in Hannah and Her Sisters. Yeah. Barbara Hershey, Diane Wiest, and Mia Farrow.
Who are all brilliant.
Who are all at the top of their game in this film. Yes. Diane Wiest, this was her first Oscar for a Woody Allen film. I think it was this one in Bullets Over Broadway she won Oscars for. Brilliant. She's fantastic. She's Holly. She's the flighty sister.
Now, she was in Practical Magic too, by the way.
Oh, really? Was she?
Yes.
Was she? And she's in another film that we're going to talk about in just a moment as the mom. So she's all over this whole sisters thing. But these three are, there's the kind of the two serious sisters, one of whom is, and they're both married to kind of artist types. Barbara Hershey's married to a really troubled artist who kind of keeps her kind of locked away. Mia Farrow's is Woody's ex-wife in this film, married to Michael Caine, who has an affair with Barbara Hershey, and then kind of off to the side. And then off to the side is Diane Wiest as this kind of, struggling person who's trying to find herself and doing a really bad job of it, who in a flashback scene went on the worst first date in the world with Woody Allen and then ends up with him at the end of the movie. They end up together. It's a very complicated story that spans 2 years. The kind of hallmarks of the film are a Thanksgiving that opens up the movie. There's a Thanksgiving right in the middle, and then the next Thanksgiving is the last scene of the film, and it's these 3 places where the whole family kind of comes together, and then the rest of it doesn't really have a plot line that you know where it's going necessarily, but it's a brilliant character study of
it's like slices of life too. Scene study.
But the scene that really kind of I'll always remember is in the middle of the movie. Diane Wiest has decided that this whole acting thing is really not going my way, and I think I'll try writing. And their 2 sisters are like, okay, whatever. And so she's basically there to hit up Mia Farrow. Diane Wiest is there to hit up Mia Farrow for some money. And while this is going on, Barbara Hershey is racked with guilt sitting there with her sister because she is sleeping with Mia Farrow's husband.
Right.
And watching her younger sister hit up Mia Farrow for money, stress her out. And she knows, but no one else knows, also how much emotional damage she's doing to her sister, feels protective, but in more of a guilty kind of way. And the camera just circles around the 3 of them. And they're talking over each other. And all of this is just playing out. There's stuff that the characters themselves don't know, but you do about each other. And the way that it just plays out is it's such a powerful depiction of what these siblings are kind of going through.
It's a very complicated sister relationship.
Yes.
There.
A lot of layers.
So you have the rivalry, but you also have then the guilt. There's that protectiveness, and so, and
the way that Diane Wiest can keep coming back and saying, "I need a little bit of money," and they're like, "How much?" I mean, you can tell they're exasperated. And again, if this wasn't a sister, you'd say, "Get out of my face! I don't have money for you," But it's your sister, and so you do what you do.
And I think that's part of when you're creating a movie or a story about sisters, it's going to resonate. It's going to be more popular if you do have those layers, because it is this, as you said, you don't choose them.
Yeah.
You're stuck with them.
Yep.
And so whatever it is, it's not like you don't feel like you can cut them off completely, because you still got to deal with them.
Yeah.
You put a bunch of brothers together. You're not. That's going to be a different story. That's a completely different story.
Yeah, and we'll get there. We'll get there.
Right, but their issues are different, and so I think that it's nice to see stories of women dealing with women. And I'll tell you one that was actually titled Sisters, and it's recent, and it's Amy Poehler and Tina Fey.
Hard right turn from Hannah and her sisters.
It is. But my
in tone and everything else.
For going toward this.
But also Diane Wiest.
Because, oh my God, that's right, is because of their relationship.
Yes.
Was not competitive per se.
No. In fact, it really struck me watching this movie, and I watched it in prep for this show. I had not seen it until...
Of course you had.
And so I watched it with some friends of mine, and halfway through, somebody needed to take a bio break, and so we paused the movie, and my friend turned around and said, well, what's your take so far? And I said, well, so far I'm struck by the fact that these 2 women don't have any conflict with each other at all. And for the first half of the movie, that was true. Some conflict did emerge between the 2 of them at some point. It happens in movies. Conflict drives story. But again, here we have this mismatched duo who might not have been great friends had they not been sisters. Amy Poehler was the good girl, and Tina Fey was the wild child. And they loved each other, and they were very supportive of each other. And they each had their quirks and foibles. And Amy Poehler was the one that the parents went to first with difficult news, and often said, why don't you tell your sister? Because we don't want to. And Diane Wiest and James Brolin as the parents were very, very fun.
Here's the thing. It's not a great movie, and that's not why I put it in here. I put it in here because of the relationship between the sisters.
Yeah, it's a different take.
Yes, and I think that's what I like to see, because there's so many things out there where, Crimes of the Heart is a story of sisters, and there's
a play that was a movie.
Sissy
Spacek, Diane Keaton, Jessica Lange.
Yes, and I don't know. There's these different ones where the sisters, they're not supportive. Maybe that's what I want to say.
Yeah.
And so I like the fact that here was this new movie
Yep.
that it was a comedy. And
Yes.
It was absurd to...
Raunchy comedy.
Yes.
And silly.
Very, very silly. Here you had this relation. I really liked the relationship with the sisters.
Yeah.
And that was, it felt real. The movie doesn't.
No.
Don't get me wrong.
No.
But, and the plot, not at all. But the sisters, it was very, very cool.
It struck me halfway through, like, I think Tina Fey and Amy Poehler came together to make this movie called Sisters. Mm-hmm. That's the title of the film. And really wanted to tell a different story. I think I almost feel like they, as feminists and friends, wanted to say, you know what, let's show the world two sisters who've really got each other's back. Mm-hmm. Who just, and that's the given. Yeah. A little bit of conflict spurs up later on because one of them wasn't being honest with the other, but you could see why, for really good reasons, really protective, reason. I mean, you could, as soon as you step back from it for a second, you kind of go, okay, I see where this is, it's paper thin. But again, for the first half of the film, they're really taking care of each other. Yeah. And if anything, it's them against time is really the story. Not to make it sound more epic or
it's not. It's really not.
It's really not. It's because the film centers around, let's have a big blowout party like we had when we were in high school. Yes. And they behave like children.
And get one of them laid. Anyway, to slide on through some of these movies, because I also wanted to touch on the television thing, as we talked about crimes, The Heart is out there. White Christmas is out there.
Sure.
You want to see sisters, and they basically do the song that they sing.
Vera Ellen tap dances like nobody. And that,
she in her contract, she had to have like 2 or 3 dance numbers, and I think 2 of them had to be solo.
But at one point, what part of the plot is that Rosemary Clooney goes off on her own. Of course, it's a man breaks her heart, but I mean, she does kind of separate from her sister and have an act that's all her own, and best song in the whole movie.
It is a good song.
Yeah.
It is a good song.
Yeah.
Rosemary Clooney, oh man, when she was, she was great. She was wonderful.
She was great.
But
Frozen isn't interesting. We didn't really get into that, but I mean,
that is huge.
In terms of that Disney princess phenomenon, there's never been a Disney princess who had supportive sisters. The Little Mermaid had sisters.
Yeah, but
Cinderella had evil stepsisters. Yep. But there's never been a relationship between two sisters that have really been the heart of the movie.
And when you say that, you mean that because if you remember at the end, spoiler alert, that is what saved them.
Yes.
Was the sisters loving each other.
Yes.
Not the boy.
Not a prince that takes them away.
That's a non-Disney thing as well.
Yeah.
And I think that
started with Brave.
Yes.
In that it was that finally we had a mother, right? That's the other thing. Next Mother's Day we'll surely do a show all about moms. But that was, the one Disney princess thus far that like actually had a mom. Also Emma Thompson, interesting. And Brave ended, spoiler, with guess what? I don't want a husband right now in my life. I'm still a kid.
Yeah.
And that's how it ended.
Yeah.
My brain exploded. And then Frozen came along, and it really was this thing where these two sisters are the core of that story.
And they saved themselves.
Yes.
No man saved either one of them. Neither of them. I mean, the little sister had a boyfriend, but they weren't getting married yet. It was just... It was
she
delightful.
met a nice guy, and good for her. Yeah,
it was delightful, but it was that sister love that was all about this, and I thought it was great because it was made for children, so children can go see that, and it was just a really nice role model for girls. Save yourself, but also don't turn on your other girls.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I thought Frozen should be in there.
A little progress.
Twitches, which was a movie.
I have no idea what that is.
Tia and...
Tamora
Mallory.
How I pulled that out of my ass.
Nicely done, though. Nicely done. They play twin witches.
Hence Twitches.
It's Disney. My daughters loved it. But what it is, that relationship, again, this is not about the plot of the movies, okay? This is about the relationship with the sisters. Totally. They were adopted separately and find each other accidentally.
Well, of course, because,
And then they realize, and
a la Parent Trap kind of a thing.
Yes, very much like that. It was very much like that. But they realized, obviously, that they looked like, and it was very much Parent Trappy kind of thing, except that they weren't trying to get parents together. But they were very supportive. They bonded together to get stuff done, to clean up the magical mess that was out there, to save their parents, actually. But anyway, so that was that. Again, that is a nice role model of the of. Now there are some like virgin suicides. You know that one?
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
Well, it's basically Kirsten Dunst and this family. It's, you know what?
Is that a Sofia Coppola movie?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. James Woods plays the dad. Yeah, I know. It's one of those that it's disturbing.
Okay.
And I don't know that it's not a sister relationship. They end up with a suicide pact. It's not a sister relationship.
It's healthy.
It's not one to.
Well, another one that does kind of, I wouldn't call healthy, but damn, it was entertaining. We talked about this movie when we did the Julia Roberts piece, was August Osage County. And these are all of the actresses named Julie something playing sisters. Julia Roberts, Julianne Nicholson, and Juliette Lewis play the three sisters in this one. And you've got the cynical one, the kind of homebody, plain one who didn't go far from home, and then the slutty ditzy one.
Which is also kind of what Crimes of the Heart was.
Yeah, kind of the same kind of template. Although, except that the middle one was kind of the stayed around one, and the oldest one was that character in Crimes of the Heart. It's a story about Meryl Streep is kind of the person that sucks up a lot of the oxygen from this movie. She's the abusive, drug-addicted mother who left her mark, unfortunately, on all three of these women in very different ways. Like Hannah and her sisters, there's this one scene where the three adult women who are siblings are just kind of separated from everything else, and they're sitting out in their backyard and they're just kind of talking about stuff. And the way that their past has been kind of imprinted on them, but in such different ways, really comes into sharp focus in this one scene. And it's delightful. Although, at one point, one of them drops the news that, a couple years ago I had cancer. And the other two sisters had no idea. And they were like, how can you? And she was like, look, I don't owe you anything. And it really kind of had this moment of, you're right. I mean, when family doesn't treat you well, and it's not a healthy relationship, sometimes you don't, and it did kind of, I was on the side of Julia Roberts who were like, but I'm your sister. Like that means something, because I think as we watch these things and we look at our own sibling relationships, we go, that does mean something. And Julianne Nicholson was just like, but why? Why does that have to mean anything? Why do I have to tell you I've got cancer? And I had to stop and go, that's a good question. Yeah. Especially when your family is not a source of joy. Yeah, and there are arguments for both sides to that. Yeah. And I think that's a good question to bring up on that is you have to love your family. Do you have to like them? Yeah. You don't have to be best friends with them. And do you have to love them? I mean, in cases of abuse, I think I've known people who have separated themselves from their family of origin. And I have to say that's sad that had to happen that way, but good call. No, sometimes it's a healthy thing to do. Okay, so I'm going to mention Gypsy is also kind of a fun movie of sisters on that. Stage to film, but yes. Yep. Yes. One we were talking about, Sisters That We Choose, A League of Their Own, is kind of a story of sisters you choose. And there's a sister relationship at the heart of that movie. There's a sister at the heart of the movie, but it's both. It's two sisters, and theirs is a competitive. Theirs is very much a competitive, but there is it's a one-sided competitive thing. Gina Davis doesn't really feel like she has to compete with her younger sister, and that's just, and part of that's just being the older one and going, look, there's room for both of us here. We're both on the team. Calm down. And then there's the baby who always has felt overshadowed. So there's that, but then there's this group of women that they choose to become family with. Yeah. And so I think that League of Their Own kind of hits both. Yeah. Of that whole and that thing really kind of comes into focus when you get to the very end, and these people who have not seen each other for 30 years, and suddenly they're right back to where and then you see them playing baseball. Okay. Yeah, and then you see the real life people, and you realize that that's what really happened with the real women who were playing. Yeah. So we're going to go to the boob tube next. Okay, one more.
honorable mention. Not going to talk about it much. Just going to say that it's Sisters. It's a movie back in like 1973. It's one of Brian De Palma's early ones.
Oh, good. I do.
He likes violence, does he? Margot Kidder.
And?
Margot Kidder, but it was her first movie.
Oh, was it?
Yes. And she played twins.
Yes.
And it's a horror movie.
Is one of them a psycho killer or something, trying to kill the other?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
as one does.
I'm putting it out there because it is about sisters.
It's called Sisters.
And it's about their relationship. Throw that out. Just honorable mention on that. So television. Sisters in television is a little different.
Well, yeah, because when you're doing a TV show, it's not necessarily a pitch where you have a beginning, middle, and an end, and
right.
So you don't necessarily pit sisters into a situation that is going to be resolved. This is a story that you're going to come back to week
right.
after week after week.
Right, and there's been a lot. We were talking about the Maori girls doing Twitches as a movie.
Twitches.
But they also did a TV series called Sister.
Yes, they did. Yes, that's where I knew them.
And again,
or heard of them.
They were still very supportive sisters, and just went. It was a comedy sitcom. So they did what sisters do there. There was also that drama with Selena. No, what's her name?
Selah Ward.
Selah Ward. That's her.
Swoosie Kurtz.
Yes.
Bruce Springsteen's ex-wife. And
oh my God, I forgot about
Patricia
her.
Calendar.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was on for about 4 seasons.
Uh-huh.
And I never watched it.
I watched it. My mom really loved this show.
Well, it goes to me in the same place as 30-something back in the day.
Okay.
And This Is Us now.
Okay.
I don't watch it. It's not. It's just too soap opera-y.
It was a little soapy. What was interesting about Sisters in the setup was that this was a family of 4 girls, no brothers, and apparently their dad, who I kind of think Dad wasn't part of the picture anymore, but Mom was still around. Dad wanted a son so badly that when each pregnancy happened, he chose a boy's name, and that was it. And so these sisters were named Teddy, Georgie, Alex, and Freddie.
I don't know.
So Frederica was one, Alexandra, Theodora, and Georgina, and of course they went by Alex. So they had these very androgynous names. It was kind of the cutesy thing where they all kind of had these boyish names, and it was kind of drummed into them from the beginning of time that Dad really wanted a boy.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. That is again with this misogynistic society and how if you look back again, we go all the way back to Jane Austen and before that. That was the thing, is that women were worth less. So that if that's part of it, the psychology of growing up, always knowing that you weren't what at least one parent wanted.
But they had each other. That was the thing. And so the bonds between each other. I remember the plot line that got the soapiest at one point was one of them was carrying a child for the other. There was a surrogate mother storyline going on. And the woman who was pregnant with her carrying her sister's child, who I believe was her sister's biological child, she was really the vessel, but having a really hard time with this idea that she was eventually going to give birth to a child and then hand it to her sister to raise, and had agreed to do this in the love of her sisterly heart, but then was struggling and didn't know how to come to her sister and say, I don't know how I'm going to hand you this child, and that was tough. Then they lightened things up a little bit by having a television crew actually descend on their small town, make a made-for-TV movie about this particular subject matter, and then it became this thing where one of them was rescuing the other from a fiery bus, and I remember Patricia Calendar at one point just going, cut, in the middle of this whole thing, because she couldn't stand how her life was being made into a soap opera, which was kind of ironic given the fact that it was kind of soapy. But it was entertainment, and it was, and I think, my mother, who I told you was the second of 5 girls in an all-girl family, there was something, as soapy as it was, there was something about this particular story that she could really relate to.
I will tell you one that I watched that I did enjoy, at least for the first several seasons, was Charmed.
another witches thing.
It's witches.
Sisters and witches. That just seems to be a theme.
Practical Magic was like that too. But it was, again, the sisters got along. I mean, most of the time.
Yeah.
They had some sibling-y stuff.
We didn't talk about Hocus Pocus. More sister witches.
Oh, we didn't either. Oh, well. It was, their relationship, they loved each other. They were trying to support each other, and they were, what they were fighting was always outside them.
Yeah.
They were circling the wagons. And I think that, when Shannon Doherty got fired, they brought in McGowan, Rose McGowan, and it wasn't this. There was
who's all over the news right now. And let me just shout out #RoseArmy.
But part of it was when the storyline happened, they brought her in, and there was a little conflict, but then it was over, and she was one of them. So she, there was an acceptance there. It wasn't this big drama inside.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that they were on the same team. That was the thing on that. One that had sisters on it, but it wasn't necessarily the only in focus. I mentioned these two different ones. One, the Brady Bunch. Okay, so you had these three sisters, and then the mother married this guy with three brothers, and so suddenly they became a family.
Big blended family.
Marsha.
Yeah.
That's
sure,
huge.
Jan. Sure, Jan.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many iconic quotes and things that come from this, but that was a relationship that we watched growing up.
And Jan and Marsha that's a relationship that a lot of people, I mean, all you have to do is say Marsha, and you get that idea of the pretty older sister who can do no wrong and how painful it is to live in their shadow. And also Jan was that quintessential middle child because Cindy was the cute one with her little curls and the youngest one in curls. Yeah, a really painful place to be.
It actually hit kind of a realistic place
to
a certain extent.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have the Cosby
But interestingly, right, just talking about how the difference between sisters and brothers, you didn't see that. Peter didn't have that. Peter never went, Greg. Peter never felt that.
It's a guy vibe.
Yeah.
It's a different thing.
But you get that with there's something in this, at least the way it's presented to us in pop culture.
Right.
We seem
there can be only one. But,
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But I also wanted to mention, and it's the Cosby Show. That you had siblings in there, and and again, whatever you want to say about Bill Cosby, this show was iconic, and it was a success, I think, because the family was supportive of each other. It wasn't sniping to get your comedy. It was an internal crap to get their stories. The family supported each other. And the sisters supported each other. No matter what silly things Lisa Bonet's character was going to do, everybody rallied around. And I think that's what people can relate to. And it's nice to see when some of that's on there. Others that were kind of like that we're going to go into, Seventh Heaven.
Okay, never saw it, never watched it.
Yeah, I didn't watch it much. But it was, again, that same kind of Cosby-esque feel. Party of Five, which was just siblings. And that actually would be on the brother and sister thing. But there were two sisters in there. Family Matters, which was, again, a sitcom. And they had two sisters in there. Again, the supportive thing. Family Ties. You remember that? You had the dumb sister, then you had the smart little sister kind of thing. And then, of course, in Modern Family, the two sisters, you have the same thing. You have the dumb sister, then you have the smart little sister. Full House, a bunch of sisters. I don't like to spend too much time on that.
That was more about the wacky uncles kind of,
For example, when I go to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for the first several years, Buffy was an only child. And then they brought her a little sister.
Which seemed like such a cheap move when it happened. It was like, what the hell is this? And then it turned into this ingenious plot device.
It was really, really good. And But that was also, that ended up being a protective sister kind of thing, and they supported each other. Now, one that I know that you is close to your heart.
Yes.
And of course, I mean this by you've pulled it out of someone's chest and it's beating and bleeding all over your hand because that's how violent it is. Is Arya and Sansa
from Game of Thrones. Okay. Yeah, Game of Thrones. Problematic. We've discussed why before. But Arya and Sansa have an interesting thing that's going on now. So spoiler. If you're not caught up on Game of Thrones, this might spoil some things for you. They've been separated by events for seasons 2 through 6, have had completely separate storylines, had nothing to do with each other. But in season 1, when you meet these girls, they're very young. Sansa is older. She dreams of being a grand lady sitting on a throne, married to a rich man. You know, she's the furthest thing in the world from kind of a feminist figure you can imagine. Arya, little tomboy, really would rather go off and be a knight. She's upset that her brothers get to practice archery and she's not allowed to, and kind of stuff like that, and just can't stand her sister. Her sister's just so annoying. Now they're meeting each other as adults, both having been through some crap. And they're not dissimilar from where they started, but life has made them, very, very different. And of where we see Sansa right now, she has been abused both psychologically and sexually, and now is this kind of tough as nails woman who is the Lady of Winterfell. Like, she's not doing it because she has a husband. She didn't marry her way into that. She is leading this family and making decisions. Arya is this badass little warrior who has not gone through that kind of level of abuse, but other than the fact that the people have killed her brothers and her father, and she's out for revenge, but has not been personally kind of abused in the same way that Sansa has. There was a fascinating story that wrapped up scene 7 where you really thought the two of them just picked up where they left off and were at each other's throats, only to find out in the very last episode of this last season that they were in cahoots the entire time. And family really trumped all of this other stuff. And, at the end of the thing, they're both looking out over this ledge where their parents had stood in the very first season, just kind of talking about, well, what's next, and the fact that, you're not that bad. Like, you're annoying, but you're not that bad. And both of them kind of have this feeling, but they've got this newfound respect for one another as adults, seeing each other as adults for the first time. And of course, the drama is heightened by the fact that they've been completely in separate storylines for all these years.
Where you have these childhood relationships, when everybody's an adult, not only do the years seem fewer in between, but you've lived life, you've had experience, and so now you can hopefully have some empathy and see things in a different way. Yeah. So I just want to mention this. Television has brought us a whole nother newfangled kind of way to look at families, and that is the reality show. There are two that jump to my mind. One is the Braxton sisters.
Okay.
Toni Braxton and her sisters. Yep. And then the Kardashians. Here's my thing about both of them, frankly. I don't really believe that reality is a good description of those kind of shows. So whatever relationship we're seeing, I don't think it's the real one.
Okay.
And so my thing about putting those on television, I get that it's making money. I get that.
Yep.
And for the Kardashians, having very few other skills that I can see, that's all they got. They better keep doing it to make money.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it's a real true look into family relationships.
Probably not. I mean, it's prepared. And yet, I will say that I watched these Kardashian shows, not only Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but, Khloe and Kourtney go to Miami and blah, 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 blah. I was entertained despite myself.
Ugh.
I didn't want to watch these shows. I would not have chosen to watch these shows. I was angry that I was kind of being quote unquote forced to, and I wasn't. I could have gone to the other room, but I didn't. It was like, okay, this is what we're going to watch. Oh yes, this is what we're going to watch. Okay, fine. And I would find myself chuckling when they would say silly things. And I would see this camaraderie, particularly between Khloe and Kourtney. I hate the fact that I know as much about this family as I do, but they had a rapport that was fun, and it was bantery. And Khloe she's funny. She's got some comic timing, and she's got a way with words, and and so there was that kind of sense of sisters. I got it.
Here's what I will say about both of sets. Whatever it is we're seeing on their day-to-day, I think is bullshit. I just do. But at the end of the day, both of them, when people will go after them, or one of them, they circle the wagon.
Oh, they do.
So I do feel that there is a familial bond with them. So there's that. That's real. But I think all the other stuff is crap. I think it's, yeah.
It's scripted. It's planned.
Yeah.
But it's not scripted to the point where, I mean, these girls don't learn lines. They just get in front of the camera and they do it. And those moments, those kind of, those little bitty moments in between. And when people start riffing off of a shared joke, that's the kind of stuff that's real. Because these are sisters and they are kind of in this reality TV venture together. You're right. I mean, the kind of ludicrous aims to which we create drama sometimes get crazy. And sometimes the drama is between the sisters. They fight and they, but do it in front of the camera. Make sure you get your good side while you're having this fight, whatever. Yeah. But, sisters can be annoying to each other but also, blood's thicker than water.
I guess my thing, if I have a final diagnosis about that, about this whole thing, is that there are some really good examples in literature, television, movies of real sister relationships. And then there's some crap ones. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those, I guess those successful ones are probably the ones that more people can relate to. And so they're probably the ones that are not as dramatic, as out there.
Yeah.
The ones that are a little closer. Little Women has been around forever and ever because it's little bits in life.
And they'll remake it again.
Oh, they totally will.
Yeah.
But the whole point is that the stories are these little stories.
Yeah.
Not these big fires in the street stuff. And I think that those are the ones, as I said about Sisters with Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, the plot is negligible. But it's a relationship is what brought them into this conversation.
Yeah.
So that is not going to be the story that lingers. It's going to be the ones, as I said, Little Women's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
And it's those, Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah.
And they stay with us, I think, because people relate to them.
Yeah.
And they get it.
Riffing off of what you just said, it kind of reminds me of this whole, doing this show. And particularly, I recall the show that we did with Allison Robinson around transgender stuff. Mm-hmm. Pop culture can be really helpful. And pop culture can be really hurtful. Mm-hmm. If it's done well, it can really, it can make our lives better. And sometimes, we see things that, are sloppily made or questionable in some form that make it more difficult for people to live their lives. This is less dramatic in that sense than trans issues on stage, certainly, or on screen. But yeah, I think that when you look at something like, Frozen, which we didn't get into that much, but the fact that we have young girls, maybe a lot of whom probably with sisters, watching that, and they're being encouraged by this film, not only to support their sisters, but also to put that relationship above some others. And that's really great. And then, and for adults, things like Sense and Sensibility, that kind of show you how to navigate these relationships well. And hopefully you leave the theater and you think, I appreciate this person who's in my life a little bit more than I did before, even though we're very different. My final diagnosis is this idea that blood is really thicker than water. That even though you don't choose these relationships, they're there, they're with you for life, and you have to do what you have to do in order to make them work. Yeah. And when you see something that resonates with you powerfully just because it's so true, that's what's going to last. It doesn't even need helpful or harmful. It's less important than, is this real? Is it true? Does it feel real to me as I watch it? And do I connect?
Shout out to Lucy.
You've been listening to Popperation with Eric and Stacey. Check out our website at popperationroom.com for links to our blog and other extras. Don't forget to subscribe to Popperation via iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, and other podcast locations. You can also follow @Popperation Room on Facebook and Twitter. Music provided by purpleplanet.com.